Hello YouTube and welcome to my new video, and in this video I would like to explain how I got into the Resident Evil franchise. Now Resident Evil is a big part of my life. I mean, I really love Resident Evil. I mean, it is probably my favourite franchise of all time. There's so many things that I just love about Resident Evil, and I think it's quite an interesting story on how I got into the franchise. And to do this we'll have to go back to around 2004, and around that time I think we just got the DVD release of Resident Evil Apocalypse, which is the sequel Paul W.S. Anderson's Resident Evil film, which, yeah, I will say that as Resident Evil fans we tend not to probably respect those movies because they don't really follow the games whatsoever, and basically you can play a Resident Evil game and the story is better than any of the movies. I would say that's a whole other topic right there. Yeah, I was about 8-9 years old. I remember a friend of ours borrowed us Resident Evil Apocalypse. I watched that movie and I really loved it because at that time as a kid I was really into horror movies. That was the main thing. Horror movies and video games were my childhood basically. I was a big fan of like A Nightmare on Elm Street, Evil Dead, Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a big thing, and I really wanted to watch a zombie movie. I mean, I think I remember watching Dawn of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead, but I really wanted to get into more zombie movies. I really liked zombies when I was a kid. It's kind of strange. I watched Resident Evil Apocalypse. I really liked it. Even to this day I do like the movie, but I do kind of consider the Resident Evil movies as their own thing. I watched that film and I was really amazed by it, and I knew something, that there were games. I knew there were games. I wasn't no specialist. I didn't have internet or anything like that. I was still a kid. I knew Resident Evil had its own game franchise, but I never knew where to start. I was walking into a supermarket one day, they had some video games, and I saw the cover of Resident Evil 4, and I was like, oh my god, that looks like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was the European cover. It's like black and red. There's the forest, and you got Dr. Salvador with his big chainsaw and a potato sack over his head. It looks like Leatherface basically, or inspired by Leatherface. But I looked at that and I was like, wow, I really want this game. But I was kind of, well, maybe it's a bit too scary for me, and it was kind of a lot of money back then, and I didn't get it. But what happened was I went into a used game shop and I was like, okay, that's it. I really want a Resident Evil game, and I find Resident Evil Outbreak and Resident Evil 4 in the same shop, and I was like, okay, which one can I get? You know, I can only pick one. So they were both on PS2, by the way. Just went with Resident Evil Outbreak, maybe because of the cover. The arms on the cover looked kind of cooler than Resident Evil 4. I wasn't sure. Like, I get home, put the game on, really scary game.
Resident Evil Outbreak.
It's not quite what I wanted. I mean, I was blown away by the graphics, and what was funny, I mean, I was trying to make out from the characters of the movie. I was like, where are the characters of the film in this game, you know? I mean, where's Alice and all that? I mean, it's funny to think that because really it's the other way around, but I just wanted it to be like the movie. But yeah, Resident Evil Outbreak I didn't really get into. I only got past like level 1. I found it kind of a difficult game, especially for me at that time. I was like, maybe Resident Evil is not for me. But another day I did go into another used game shop and I was like, okay, maybe I can give Resident Evil, you know, one last chance. I'll take Resident Evil 4. I found Resident Evil 4. I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy this game. So I get home, put the game in, start off. Looks very promising. The graphics looks amazing, especially for the time. You start off, you're basically not to spoil the game if you have not played the game, which I doubt you have if you're watching this video, but the story is basically you are Leon S. Kennedy, survived the events of the second game. 6 years later we are now special agent for United States government, and he is on a mission to save the president's daughter, whose name is Ashley in the game, which you will eventually find. So that's basically the story, but along the way you meet characters that were in previous Resident Evil games. You know, it's just an amazing story, I think, as story wise goes. It's a great game. So I remember I started to play it and I got to the village. I get my head chopped off by Dr. Salvador. I was like, right, that's it, no more. I can't play this game, it's too scary. I was like 9 years old, I was like, no, that's it. But it took me a couple of weeks. I got my courage up, put the game in again, and I played it all right to the end. Not in one sitting, of course, you know, a few days, but man, I was so hooked about this game. This game blew me away in terms of graphics, in terms of the gameplay, in terms of the story. I was so captivated by the story. It was just an amazing game. Played it, when I beat it, I just started a new game straight away. I was like, no, I love this game to bits. So yeah, that's what got me into the Resident Evil franchise. After that I was collecting Code Veronica, Resident Evil 2 I found, Resident Evil 1, the GameCube version. Resident Evil 5 was coming out a couple of years later, which I grabbed I think a week after it came out. Oh, I loved them games. But as terms as Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 4 kind of changed the franchise, probably to respect the earlier fans of the game for the worst, because in retrospect the earlier games are the best Resident Evil games, I will say. Even though personally I think Resident Evil 4 is my favourite of the whole franchise, the early Resident Evil games are survival horror games, pure survival horror, where you have to, it's all about that, saving ammunition, not killing every enemy on screen, jump scares. That was the earlier games like Resident Evil 1, 2, 3 and Code Veronica, and especially the GameCube remake. But yes, Resident Evil 4 changed it. I mean, Resident Evil 4 went through numerous development procedures. It went through, I think they was going for, if you would like to check out Resident Evil 3.5, which looks amazing, even by today's standards. Resident Evil 4 is the reason we all have Devil May Cry, because at first it was going to be Devil May Cry, but they wasn't happy. I think Shinji Mikami, the creator of the game, was not happy with the way it went or something like that, and they decided to scrap that and it became its own thing. But Resident Evil 4, the final product, is I think amazing. It does have a more action orientated aspect. There are no more zombies. The enemies are taken by what they call a Los Plagas virus, and they follow a cult called the Los Illuminados. It's like these villages have been taken over. It's like a village in Spain, I would say, even though it's not really specified where you are, but I think it's obviously is Spain, as they also speak Spanish, and you know, I don't think it's in Europe, so yeah, it is Spain, definitely Spain. So they changed the franchise for good, because this time it's not pre-rendered backgrounds, it's not fixed camera angles, it's a shoulder view, Gears of War type style, so it's different to the previous games. The problem is that every Resident Evil game that's come out after 4 has followed that style, which you can understand why, because I think Resident Evil 4 was supposed to be the last of the franchise. Because it was such a big success, they decided to keep that way, and it was critically acclaimed. You know, I mean, game got so many great scores. So they, like Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 6, they've all followed the Resident Evil 4 formula. They have taken out the horror aspect, and it's not for the good. I mean, Resident Evil 5, I really enjoyed it, and Resident Evil 6, I was kind of, you know, it looked like a Michael Bay extravaganza movie. Seriously, there's no more horror aspects. Even though Resident Evil 4 changed that, you still had horror moments in the game. I mean, between the last level when you're on the island with the regenerators, with the chainsaw guy, with all the, you know, when you're in the sewers, that's all horror aspects to me. They're actually kind of scary. Even today, if you play Resident Evil 4 for the first time, you get to the part with the regenerators, it is actually pretty spooky. With Resident Evil 5, I can't remember one moment that made me, you know, frightened, because it's not. Resident Evil 5 is an action-adventure game. Resident Evil 6 is an action-adventure game. They took on the horror aspect completely, and that's what I think has kind of ruined what Resident Evil is. As terms as Resident Evil goes today, I mean, we are getting remasters of the classic games of Resident Evil 0 and the Resident Evil GameCube remake, which are all currently out now. But with those games, maybe Capcom are trying to go back, hopefully with the next big game, to the roots of the series, which I would be very happy to see. To go back, you know, because I think survival horror has really come back now during this generation. I mean, we've had some big survival horror games. Alien Isolation, Evil Within, Until Dawn. We've had such great games, and I think Resident Evil is ready for a reboot to its roots, and I really hope they do with the next game. So I don't know if it's going to be a, you know, continuation or a reboot completely, but we can just hope and wait and see that Capcom don't mess it up this time. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.